everyone, and welcome back to Multifamily Talks Live. I'm your host, Krista Hurley, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Ariel Baranauckas, Vice President of Marketing and Recruiting at Carter-Haston, and Ashley Mysliwiec, Property Management Marketing Leader at Coast Property Management, and of course, my lovely teammate, Lisa Haskins, Industry Principal of Marketing. Multifamily Talks Live is a monthly LinkedIn series featuring candid, bite-sized conversations on all things multifamily. If you missed the live session, catch the replay on your favorite podcast platform and make sure to follow us on LinkedIn so you don't miss out on any new conversations. Please don't forget to ask any questions in the comments section of our guest speaker to engage with us. Now, earlier this month, many of the marketing industry's top marketing operators and leadership teams have gathered at the Multifamily Strategic Marketing Summit, now known as MSMS. This event is focused on one core idea. Marketing can no longer live in a silo. It has to be accountable to revenue, occupancy, and performance, especially in today's highly competitive leasing environment. So let's talk about that. But before we do, thank you guys for joining us. Can you tell our listeners about yourself? Ariel, I'm going to go to you first.
Thanks, Krista. I'm Ariel Baranauckas, VP of Marketing and Recruiting at Carter-Haston. We're a Nashville-based multifamily company, both owned and third-party property management, overseeing about 18,000 units across the Southeast. And I just lead our marketing and recruiting for the portfolio.
I love it. Just lead. You're pretty much wearing all the hats over there at Carter-Haston. Thanks so much for joining us, Ariel. Ashley, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Ashley Mysliwiec, and I am been with Coast Property Management since 2018. I'm also a U.S. Navy veteran. Coast Property Management, what I do there is I'm part of our marketing leadership, as well as more of our new projects division, such as lease ups. I'm on my ninth new project lease up right now, and just getting the property up and going off the ground. Coast Property Management, we've been founded since 1987. We have 20,000 front doors, and we are a third party as well. We're located mainly in the Pacific Northwest. We have properties in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, as well as now we are in Colorado. But we are mainly based out of Washington.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ashley, and thank you for your service. So, Lisa, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And Krista, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to have a conversation today with these two lovely ladies. As far as my background goes, I am now the industry principal of marketing at RealPage, which encompasses a lot of different things, including AI search, how our renters are really finding us, and helping all of you modernize your marketing strategies. But my background really has been quite the spectrum between on-site operations, digital marketing, and digital marketing technology. So all of that being compounded into, everything that we're going to talk about today.
So happy to have you. Now, I am going to start with you, Lisa. So I know that you bring that deep strategic marketing lens, and you also attended the Multifamily Strategic Marketing Summit, where a lot of the conversations were happening in real time. So coming out of that conference, what was the biggest or many takeaways that you heard from marketing and operation leaders about shifting marketing from a cost center to maybe a growth driver?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, this is such an energizing conference every year. They do such a great job of curating this very intimate environment where we can have authentic and organic conversations. And I'd say that we could categorize it into a couple of different categories. The first being that I heard a lot from executives who were talking about how AI is really moving from this more pilot sort of stage for them into a playbook and blueprint strategy where they're really trying to standardize the way that they're incorporating AI into their businesses. And of course, trying to reduce the risk incorporated in that. And then maybe more on the marketing side, where we're starting to see that we're moving more away from this traditional SEO conversation and evolving into this generative engine conversation and talking about what that means as far as incorporating reward structured data, listing hygiene, reviews, signals across GVPs and further. And then how that's really metamorphosizing in the renter journey and how not only is our marketing strategy changing, but it's changing because the renter journey is also shifting. And it's not so linear anymore. We're seeing that social has become king these days, and brand as well, creating a brand that's really consistent across all of the different touch points that a renter or prospect might see you out on the web. and then creating this in a more authentic manner that can, of course, maybe linger and help Gen Z find you, but also, it's helping these AI search engines really find you as well. So it's kind of a dual sided thing that we're all trying to keep up with, and really talking about deeper and deeper in the industry.
Now, I don't know about you, Ashley. I have serious FOMO about not ever attending this particular conference.
Same.
I know that Ariel also was there, as well as is on the board. So I'd love to hear your perspective, Ariel. And Lisa mentioned a lot about AI, which is a big theme for me, as well as a theme for the conference. But what were your thoughts on how the shift from experimentation to execution showed up in the sessions, and what stood out to you the most?
I think almost every session started the same way, which I actually loved. It was not here as what AI could do, or it was more situated into here's what we did with it, and this is what happened. And so it felt like it really had officially moved out of this experimental phase, but really into execution. So one thing that really stood out in one of the sessions with Justin Jones and Christy and Liv is they walked us through using AI to build marketing reports by pulling CRM, some PMS data, some campaign performance, and then really having AI summarize it. But they were really trying to set it up with the prompt to surface gaps even before they started really digging into the information. So it was almost acting like a first pass analyst for the team. And what made it really structured was it showed you the actual prompts on the screen, which everybody was pulling out their phones and screenshotting. But it was super structured. It's something very repeatable for every group to use. And the output was honestly beautiful. And it had the KPIs built in, and it made it feel like less intimidating. I really appreciated a session where they did it with you and then they showed you what it looked like. And it's something that you could actually implement on your team. And their big focus too was obviously the guardrails. I think is super important. No property names, no resident data, everything kind of aggregated, and obviously inputting what your company's AI policy is. So they really set it up for success. I think one of my top sessions, another session with Justin from Cushwake, he was really just talking about moving off the one-off cases and really building systems that scale for your department. There was this big theme talking about we are, as marketers, asked to do more with less. And so teams are lean and expectations are high. And, AI is really starting to fill in those efficiency gaps in a way that feels realistic. So I really enjoyed his session. There was a workshop that Erica from apartments.com did, and she went through a lot of prompted things for AI content banks, for editing posts and generating call to actions. It was just very all practical, easy to take back to the site teams. I think every person could get something out of every session. So my biggest takeaway was just AI is not replacing people, it's amplifying them. I have felt that very much so here. And so you still need that human layer to really add in the strategy tone that typically you're not getting from the AI. It's the decision making that you personally can add to it. So I think the bigger risk is maybe those that are not utilizing it or being slower to adopt it.
Now you're singing my song there, Ariel. That is definitely where RealPage's focus is not replacing people, but helping enhance them and helping them learn about AI along the way. So building on that, there was a lot of discussion around how renters are discovering and evaluating communities today, especially with AI-driven search and social platforms. So what was your takeaway on how the industry is keeping up with that shift?
Yeah, I think this was a big focus. And honestly, it was a lot of what I kind of covered in my session with Erica, more alongside the social side of this shift. What we're seeing is social is just no longer like a content channel just to throw images and videos. It's really a discovery channel. And what happened last summer, where Google is now indexing social media profiles on Google itself, it's also shifting into the tab. So there's now a short video tab where it's all your social reels and posts. And then they have just a videos tab that is surfacing YouTube. And so what we ended up doing is we started testing some of these things and seeing how it kind of played into our space. And there was an example that we showed where there was an actual post showing up second on Google's organic search for the property. Then we showed a sample of the short videos tab where our property had dominated that entire tab with their property reels and videos for social media. We had other comps, but then the strategy was go redo some of your posts from the past 6 months. Go make sure that your profile's optimized. Go look at your hashtags, redo those, kind of resetting and refocusing, understanding how search is really, really changing. And then a big thing that we dove into was how Instagram is also becoming its own search engine. If you just type in a property name onto Instagram, you get served up an entire summary of what you're searching. And then below that is all the posts and the reels that are also just discoverable by somebody who's looking for that topic. And it could be apartments in insert city or neighborhood. So I think the way that we really framed it is it's two-pronged. It's you have to optimize for Instagram discovery, but then you also have to optimize for Google indexing and really trying to see where that's going to take us. And I think beyond social, there were tons of other sessions that really talked about AI broadly. They discussed what your website should have, how you should really optimize Google business, and your FAQs are going to be king for GEO and making sure you're set up for that. So I think overall it was such a good time discussing those things and really putting together action plans for everybody in the room and figuring out potentially where you can execute. And I think where potentially maybe people get kind of paused or don't move forward as fast is because I think when you think about all these things, there's one, a real bandwidth kind of challenge, something like FAQs. If you have, 125 properties in your region, that's 125 times potentially 6 to 10 FAQ questions. You have to work with the on-site team, get them, answered efficiently for you to then take those answers and put them on your website. But I think it's just figuring out what that looks like. But then there's the second piece, which is cost. So if bandwidth is a problem, you could potentially use a third-party group to help you with that. But then now that's an added expense. And so just kind of you're either investing in your team or bringing in a partner. And then I think the third thing to think about it is potentially leadership buy-in. There might be a hurdle there. For us, it hasn't been an issue, but I think the way I can maybe say you could try to move it forward is just showing proof. I think there is a lot of things that partners can surface up and just say, this is where we need to be because check this out, we're not here, or look where we're placed because we're not doing these things. And so I truly really think that it's going to be a fun time for our industry. A little nerve-wracking, but I think it's just that gap. And I think we are going to execute and we're going to give a better renter experience for all of the prospects.
Man, I really wish I was at this conference. So you mentioned Gen Z is already social forward. So social media and reputation are positioned as real demand drivers, not just awareness tools anymore. So what were your thoughts on how leadership teams should be thinking about those channels after attending the conference?
Yeah, this was a very big shift. And honestly, I think it's one leadership teams really need to lean into. I think social and reputation are not just awareness channels anymore. They're actually becoming sources of free organic traffic, one through the social, Instagram and Facebook platforms, but with, GEO and how that plays into it, those are just going to be so valuable. And it just changed the process for myself doing everyday things to apartment hunting. So I think right now at the same time, the bar is just for content is higher. So Gen Z particularly is not looking for the polished or the perfect. They want a real version of what it looks and feels like to live there, and they're willing to dig in to find it. So the way renters are actually using this now really just stood out. It's going to your favorite AI generator. So whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, and asking, I'm thinking about living at this property. What can you tell me about this place? And, I prompted that and it comes back with a beautiful full report, tells you the good, the bad, the ugly, and it gives you actual review themes. Sometimes it gives you direct quotes that you can click on from the links. And at the very end, if you have an AI profile for you, it's going to give you the recommendation and it's going to take in the conversations that you had in the past with your AI and say, well, this is why Ariel would like this, or this is why Ariel should be concerned, or here's a complete red flag. So the reality is now not just getting positive reviews and posting. It's you need volume, you need content, you need the depth, and that's just really where it's at. And I think the challenge is going to just be awareness, making sure teams understand, and that leadership just needs to recognize that these channels directly will affect the processes and expectations.
So, Lisa, over to you. I know that you both attended. If you zoom out, what themes of the conference do you think senior leaders should be paying closer attention to this year? Is the one that Ariel just mentioned it, or is it a combination of all of them? And maybe explain just the why behind it.
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination. Ariel really hit the nail on the head when it comes to taking a closer look at what we're doing from a fundamental level. And, a common friend of ours always says we should inspect what we expect, right? And so I love that Ariel was talking about how we should be looking at that. We should be jumping into these AI platforms and asking those same questions that renters are asking, because that's going to give you a clear, visible line into what we should be doing. And that's exactly what we should be focusing, right? Like, get back to the basics, because these are all things that we know how to do and we know how to do well. It's more just thinking about it from the lens of how are these signals now being looked at by something like an AI search versus a traditional SEO. And the great thing about that is that the fundamentals of AI search also impact your downstream renter, because really what AI search is doing is it's prioritizing what the renter prioritizes. So it's thinking about depth of content. It's thinking about the reviews. Are you credible and trustable? So if you just kind of put yourself back into the renter's shoes, I think that is really going to give you a great focal point for the next year and give you a great checklist of things to maybe check in on with the on-site teams and your marketing teams.
Yeah, so we've heard the phrase marketing as a revenue engine used a lot, but it clearly means different things depending on the role, strategy, and execution. So when you hear that phrase, what does that mean to you in the context of multifamily?
Yeah, marketing really is a revenue driver in both the sense that it's finding and feeding those leasing teams quality prospects and protecting the back door. Because, in a traditional marketing sense, we know that we marketing should be creating leasing velocity. And so when we have a really solid marketing strategy that's pulling in these high intent renters that are ready to pull the trigger and delivering those directly to the leasing teams, that's going to impact your number of days on market for those units. And hopefully, again, we're going to be increasing revenue by decreasing the time that we have, these vacant units on market. And hopefully that revenue is also going to cover maybe, the equivalent or even more of the campaign that you're running to fill those beds. And we're also seeing that, there's a shift from demand capture to more predictive demand generation. So, what Ariel had mentioned earlier about getting analytical and really studying the renter journey is something that we all need to be doing in order to, of course, prioritize revenue. Because if we're not following the renter, we've lost the plot. So, we got to think about the reputation. And again, it goes back to, how people are perceiving us, because I put myself in my consumer shoes for just a second. And am I willing to buy that pair of shoes that's maybe got like a 3.5-star rating? And I'm looking through all the information about the fit, how comfortable it is, how do they look, all the photos. Those are the exact same things that our renters are doing. So when you're protecting that and you're creating this priority of more of a digital curb appeal, I might say, that's really going to impact the downstream revenue that you can charge. Because also you're thinking, if you think about how you increase your star rating on any review platform by about 0.5%, that also allows you to command 2 to 3% premium in rent. So you can see how all of these things kind of help create a more inviting ecosystem for revenue growth.
Yeah. And one of the foundational shifts that we keep coming back to today is how marketing is managed and measured, and that mindset alone can dramatically change outcomes. So, Ashley, welcome to this party. Sorry to make you feel left out. We were next year we're getting on the MSMS list.
I
Let's
was
go.
going to say, yeah,
Um,
more motivation for next year. It's fine.
but on that topic, what are the biggest differences between managing marketing as an expense versus managing as a revenue engine?
I love that we're using the word engine because I think there's such illustration to that, right? Like it's powerful. Like if you think of an engine, there's so many different gears and, systems that have to talk to each other. And that's honestly where we're at with, multifamily marketing now. I would say that I honestly it's more about we can focus now and kind of fine tune the output and optimize that now versus just and the outcomes of that versus just focusing on like constantly what we're putting into it. Now we're on the other end of things where we don't have to focus as much as, how much work is going on the back end, but now we can kind of sit back and go, okay, what is that bringing us? What is this specific marketing channel bringing us? And, where should we really be putting our time? And that also allows us to work with our on-site teams to focus more on our KPIs and tweaking different things. What's working for one property, maybe in one demographic in one area, and what might be better for a different demographic, a different area, and kind of utilize different strengths and even areas of focus, and then also utilizing different on-site teams being able to coach each other, maybe even on some of these different pieces of our engine here.
Awesome. So, Lisa, I'm going to punt this one over to you. When marketing is aligned correctly, its influence goes far beyond top of the funnel. So, where do you see marketing having the most direct influence on NOI today?
That's a great question. And I would say that it really affects both ends of that equation. On the revenue side, like we just talked about, we're really protecting the back door. So when we're making sure that we're getting those heads in beds, we're delivering these like high intent to rent leads to the leasing team, it translates into decreased time in market. But then, flip side of that, on the operating expenses side, I think this is actually the more intriguing side of it because if we think about it, marketing has traditionally been, of course, this pre-sales sort of event that we think about. But now we're shifting more into this perspective that we as marketers have an effect on the entire life cycle of a renter. So not only on that prospect side, but also we're influencing how long they stay with us because, Ariel talked a lot about the social impacts, what we're doing with our image outside of the property. And I think that really speaks to, the feeling that a renter gets on property. So it's not just about getting them in, getting them through that door, leasing that apartment. It's really about delivering a very quality experience all the way through their prospect to resident lifestyle so that we give them a reason to stay and of hopefully reduce turnover costs in that. And again, impacting the NOI.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because that was a great lead into my next question, which is, we've seen beautifully designed campaigns fall flat because the execution didn't connect on site. So, Ariel, and then I'm going to ask Ashley to also weigh in here. What breakdowns happen when marketing isn't aligned with on-site and operations team, and how do those affect conversion and retention of your residents?
Yeah, I think the breakdown happens when marketing is selling a story that the property can't deliver. So, for example, if your social content is showing this beautiful pool and perfect amenities, but, behind closed doors, the pool's been under maintenance for 2 weeks and no one told marketing, and then prospects show up and then they see reality and you want to make sure what they see online. We get it. It's your photos. But if they're going to Instagram, that should be more of like, this is today or this was yesterday. So you want to make sure that they don't feel misled, that you are showing exactly what it looks like if they were to show up. And, if something's under construction or, capital projects, things like that, you tell a story. And then from the conversion side, marketing can't drive all the traffic in the world, but or we can, but the leasing team doesn't know how to handle that many leads and handle them appropriately. So we want to make sure to deliver quality leads. And we want them to be something that can be actionable. Let's schedule a tour. Let's come look at the property. Let's see if you love it. And if you do, let's make sure that the full experience goes through leasing. And so just really just setting the expectation from the visual to when they get on site, and then making it where it's not complicated, really trying to drive from your data and your analytics. And from the retention side, I feel like if residents feel like they were sold something that didn't match their actual living experience and leave, they're then going to leave reviews. And then those reviews turn into um, AI search feelings and experience of, hey, I lived here and this is what's happened. And we really want to kind of show the story of, should I live here, and have those surface up and have really great stories. Life happens. If there's a service request, something doesn't get fixed, a resident maybe will take to reputation and go to Google. But we have seen a lot of times that if we can do it and take care of it the right way, and communication is key, that they will change their review, as long as we've kept, our end of, the side of the contract of taking care of our residents. So I think in general, the fix is simple but not easy. Marketing, leasing, operations, we have to talk to each other regularly, and really just be on the same page to support the on-site team doing, the hard work of leasing these properties.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just did a multifamily talks last month on the whole retention talk track with Melanie French, CEO of RR Living, and it really does start with the maintenance team, like you said, Ariel. So that can perpetuate some bad reviews. So definitely get on top of that for sure. Now, Ashley, I'm going to go to you. Ariel said something about the volume of leads and maybe not being able to handle those. So how do you balance lead volume versus lead quality, especially when revenue is the end goal?
I love that question, especially as we have AI more and more introduced, right? And we're using it to complement, right? Not fully supplement. And I think one thing that's so great as well about this industry is that we're never going to fully replace humans, because even, recently I've been working directly with a prospect, and they love when you have a live human voice on the other line, and then that human's actually the same human that they just talked to, that they get to come see on site, right? So I love that we are, we're kind of protecting that way, but we also get to use AI as that tool to help us just leverage true leads here, and kind of again, like I said, help complement as we go through. Because like Ariel said, sometimes that lead volume can be far too much for on-site, and especially as we add more things. And you might get properties that are small, so they're kind of doing everything on their own. We have properties of all different sizes at Coast, so you might have a community manager who's wearing all of the hats where they're at, right? So definitely leveraging CRM systems to the AI agents are built into the CRM systems to filter out and get those true leads. And then something else I wanted to touch on that Ariel mentioned is just basically, Google Business Page, GBP. We do biweekly trainings now at Coast on this because of how big of an impact it can make now with the GEO. Because that alone can be kind of a way to filter out true leads with the FAQ feature that's now been added. So it's definitely huge help to have AI for a lot of these sites, because now that we have so much automation, it kind of opens up like the phrase, it's kind of like trying to get a sip of water out of a fire hydrant, right? Like there's sometimes so much of an import of leads that you're like, where do I begin? Well, a lot of times now with our systems, they're so optimized, and it's just a beautiful, engine again, that we can set different settings in there and have these AI agents just help us be able to, do they make, very practically, do you make 2.5 times the rent? Do you qualify for the rent to income ratio, for example, and just different things like that. When are you looking to move? So before, a renter, as they're doing all these different touch points, right? One of them can be where they're, seeing if we even have the availability, for example, for a 2-bedroom, next month. So I love that we can utilize, have these AI systems and have all these marketing systems help us show what's available in the now today, like Ariel was mentioning. And I think that also helps us back up having more true leads versus just lead volume and being able to just focus on those quality leads. Like if I have, 100 prospects in a day on site, but I know, I've got 15 of them that are, ready to move right away. They're looking for the studios we have available, for example. Who am I going to call? Am I going to go through the top of that 100 prospects list when and this gets really practical for outside hands, right? They sometimes have to really make those decisions in the 2 hours they have in their day to make phone calls. Maybe, are they going to start at the top of that list of 100, or are they going to go to that 15 and just really hone in on bringing that revenue in and give that specialized care to that 15?
Yeah, awesome. And AI helping you prioritize that. We did have a couple of comments come in. Justin Godwin, multifamily marketing expert, director of marketing strategy and innovations. The AI conversations really entered a new dimension at MSMS. So much great content. Thank you, Justin, for chiming in. Love to have you pulled into the conversation. And then my buddy Paul Bergeron, content strategist, storyteller, business reporter, and connector for many industries. Apartment marketing videos or images with people in them perform better, but that can be costly or challenging to produce. Has anyone tried to create a persona of a renter via AI, not a human, and have that person deliver messaging, etc.? Very interesting question. Ariel, do you have any way in there on that one from Paul?
I like it. We have thought about it, and we are still on the side where we are just wanting our people to be the forefront of our social media channels, especially with the CEO of Instagram. He talks about it a lot, and not to hit on generations, but I mean that's going to be our next renter, so we need to think in that mindset. But they are tired of the perfect and the polished and potentially the not real. And they really just want to see what's happening. Can I see myself living here? And I think we want to try to do that as authentically as we possibly can. And so part of the session that I had at conference last week in Napa was really just how did we scale that for Carter-Haston? And we are not perfect, but we found a system that works. We are scaling. We're putting time to social media. We're supporting the teams to be foundationally the people on those pictures and those videos, and really trying to set that human connection, and really letting AI kind of handle some operational noise where we feel like that's a better setting for it. So for us, it's not a strategy that we want to play in. We want to continue to thrive with our people. Not to say that that won't happen down the road, but we are really trying to drive 2026. Our social media word of the year is being authentic. And so we're going to kind of take that person out.
Yes. So we'll close with this one question to the team here. If you could give one piece of advice to marketing teams that are trying to make the shift today, being early in their journey, let's say, what would it be? Lisa?
Yeah, I can kick us off. Yeah, and at the risk of oversimplifying this, I would just say focus small in order to dream big because, there are a million things that we can do in marketing to improve, and we should always be optimizing. But just take a look at how your teams are managing those everyday factors like reviews, listings, social postings, because that's going to help you guys improve your chances of being cited in both traditional and AI search and really help you guys, again, create that leasing velocity that you need to amplify your revenue impact.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Lisa. What stood out to me today, regardless of the role, strategy, leadership, or even execution, the common thread is alignment and accountability. Those are the two A's I've heard of, aside from Ariel saying, authenticity or authentic. But those are some really good ones to kind of get your foundation on. So thank you, Lisa, Ariel, and Ashley for grounding this conversation in real-world experiences and practical insight. And thank you all for joining Multifamily Talks Live. We're excited to continue this series and offer up valuable conversations and topics that you can expect monthly. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn for updates on upcoming live conversations. And we hope everyone enjoyed today's deep dive into marketing as a revenue engine and how to stay ahead in multifamily. Thanks, and see you next month.